2008 was, I think it was my life year. I think it was the year I learned about life a lot. And I say that because it's when I started touring, it's when I started traveling, and it's when I started getting really stressed the fuck out on the road. I guess first thing I did was I made a mobile kit. So I got like a Pelican case, I got an SKB case, put my light stand in it, and I traveled with more gear than I would ever travel with today. And I actually looked at my Pelican case, I still have it the other day, I was like, holy shit, this thing's huge. And that's what I was traveling with then. So I was flying with the 2 cases, and I was doing photo shoots. And I started the year out by driving to Canada with my friend Brian Buckley. And I drove with him because at the time I was 18. Was I 17? No, I was 18. I turned 18. I was 18 and a half. And I drove to Canada with him. And we went to shoot 2 of his bands that he was working with there. And then I shot 1 in Buffalo. And yeah, that was my first real shoot other than the New York one that wasn't in Madison, Wisconsin. And it was a good experience, just driving. And that's a long drive to Toronto. But just driving up there, doing some shoots. And then I sort of got stranded. I don't remember what happened to Buckley, but he had to leave, and he dropped me off in Buffalo. And at the time, I still had my manager, and I hit him up, and I was like, hey, Just Surrender is playing in Buffalo on this day. Can I hop on tour with them and go back to Madison? Because they would be in Madison in 5 days. And he was like, sure, I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen. So I don't know what happened on his end, but I think he basically told Just Surrender and said, hey, I have a photographer. He's going to ride with you in your van. And I don't think Just Surrender was stoked on it. I haven't talked to him since, but I had to ride him back with a guy who was a foot taller than me and share a seat, and I'm pretty sure he hated me, but I didn't realize it at the time. But I was basically forced him to take me on tour, and that tour was called the Man Horse and Open Source Tour, and it was All Time Low, Mayday Parade, Every Avenue, and Just Surrender. And I was out with Just Surrender for 5 days there. And being on tour with a band, well, I didn't know this before, but I really realized opened up a lot of connections. Because I met All Time Low, I met Every Avenue, I met Mayday Parade, and I hung out with them. And I had no clue how touring worked, so I imagine they were a little bit annoyed with me, but I learned a lot. And I was broke, I was dirty, long hair, I was a mess, man. But it was good, and I eventually got home to Madison, Wisconsin safe. And that was about the middle of January. Come late January, I was ready to go on my first tour. And my first tour was with 4 Letter Lie. And it just happened, they came through Madison, I hung out with them again, and they were like, hey, we're doing this full US tour, you should come. And I did not care about anything else. I was like, I'm going. I'm going to go on this tour. I'm going to spend 30 days in a van with these 8 dudes. But I didn't really think of that. I just was like, alright, we're going to go on tour. And I just went with it. And the tour started in Minneapolis, so I had to get out there. And what I did was, I think the night before I had a shoot with Ace Centers in Milwaukee, had all my gear, and that night I took a Greyhound from Milwaukee to Minneapolis, which is about an overnight 8-hour Greyhound. And if you've ever taken Greyhound buses, they're terrible. They're the worst thing ever. If you haven't taken them, I'm sorry. So that first tour with 4 Letter Lie basically started in Minneapolis, and then it went, over to California. And on the way out, we played a bunch of small shows, staying in people's houses. We were a pretty poor touring band. California, met up with the tour there, and then we did a full US tour, basically like this, all the way around. And we ended up back in Minneapolis. And during that tour, I learned so much. We went to South by Southwest, which is a huge music event. We went to Florida, we went to the East Coast, we went to all these places I'd never been before. And all along the way, I was shooting, taking press photos, and just learning life. Eye-opening shit. I definitely grew a lot. But I think that one of the things I learned the most on that tour is that, I like taking live photos, and I like taking candid shots. I didn't take many candid shots, but I was learning how to do it. At the time, I was just waiting for photo shoots to happen. I went on the road, and I would just take photos when photo shoots happened. And I sort of learned from them that you could take photos all the time, not just when photo shoots would happen. So I started taking more photos. So when I say I had a lot of life lessons, I guess I'm trying to think of some of the more memorable ones here. Ironically, thinking of the memorable ones. Not very well. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I got my first tattoo on that tour. I was 18 now. which they told me they were in a band fund. I had a nickname on that tour. It was Mark Diesel. And Mark Diesel meant, well, my last name was Maki, and, well, my last name is Elmakias, but people call me Maki. That was like my tour nickname. Pretty much everybody gets a tour nickname. And so, call me Maki, and M-A-K-I, and everybody on the tour that didn't know me yet only knew me by Maki, and they all misinterpreted it and thought they were calling me Marky, like with a New York accent, like Maki. I can't even say it. But they weren't. They were calling me Maki. So everybody started calling me Mark. So my name is now Mark on tour. And then Diesel was a term we had for like basically getting fucked up. And when I was 18, I drank a lot because I was 18. So everybody just called me Mark Diesel. And they'd be like, yeah, Diesel! Mark Diesel! And we got to Florida and we had a day off and we spent it at the beach, hung out, and then we eventually went back to a tattoo parlor. And I was the only one who was getting a tattoo, and I was very poor, but I had $80 somehow. And they were like, yeah, just get the tattoo, pay for it now, and we'll band fund it. I got the tattoo, they never pay me back, they still haven't till this day. Brian Nagan, you owe me $80. But actually, Kevin, who was in that band, is now in Fort Lauderdale, now in A Day to Remember, so I should just get him to pay me. But yeah, Mark Diesel, on my chest, first tattoo. It was funny. Other things that happened. Well, after I got that tattoo, I remember Kevin wasn't with us. He was back at the house we were staying at. And I went back over, and to show him the tattoo, well, we thought there was a party at the house. So what we did was we went back. I got totally naked. Went like this. Covered myself. And I walked in the house. And I was expecting there to be like a bunch of people. And I was just going to be like, Mark Diesel's here. And like, it would be funny. But what happened was Kevin was just sitting in there on his computer, and I go in, he takes off his headphones and looked at me and goes, Mark, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, well, this is sort of awkward, but I just got this tattoo. He's like, great, man. And I was like, well, that didn't really work. So then I went to the girl's room of the house you're staying at to go, like, fuck with her. Walked in there the same way, and I go in there, and there's, like, this massive dude in there who's like, who the fuck is this? And I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. So I just left and went and put my clothes back on. But, I mean, funny story. I was a weird dude. And that's an example of a life lesson I learned. And while I was on that tour, there was also 4 other bands on the tour. There was Before Their Eyes, Dance Gavin Dance, Skylit Drive, The Hotness, and Memphis Mayfire. And, well, that's more than 4. But they were on and off, like, switching around. And I shot all those other bands as well and tried to make connections, make relationships with them, so that maybe in the future I could tour with them. And yeah, I made a pretty good connection with Before Their Eyes, and eventually toured with them later. After that tour, I did Bamboozle. This was like my first time really flying out for a music event, but I felt that it was important because I needed to be at these events more. And what I did was I flew out with my manager, and we went to like Glamour Kills holiday show. And again, just a lot of networking, did some shoots for Glamour Kills, and then we went to Bamboozle. And at Bamboozle, I just did a bunch of shoots for everybody. I just hit up All Time Low, I hit up AP Magazine, I hit up other managers and labels. I was like, hey, I'm going to be here, your band's here, do you want any photos done? I did photos for a couple $100. I did my first shoots for AP there. I did The Devil Wears Prada and Mayday Parade. And when I shot The Devil Wears Prada, I left my camera on their bus and just totally forgot about it. And went into Bamboozle, and then I had to text their tour manager, a bad cell phone reception, and get him to come back, get the camera off the bus, keep shooting. And I shot for like 2 days straight, and just shot Mayday Parade, shot Gym Class Heroes, and just made a bunch of connections and made a bunch of photos. And it was a really good just experience. It cost me a couple $100 for a plane ticket. Stayed with in my manager's hotel, so it didn't cost me much there. And yeah, just got a lot of photos. And I think at the end of the second day, I actually got pink eye. Yeah, I don't know how I got pink eye, but by the time I got back to Milwaukee, I literally couldn't see. And then from Milwaukee, I had to drive home, or somebody picked me up because I couldn't see anything. But I'm just happy I got pink eye at the end and not during it, because it's really hard to be a photographer when you can't see. Yeah. Gross. From there, I went back home to Madison, and while I was home, not on tour, I just made a habit to keep like a tab on all the venues in the area. Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, Minneapolis. And when bands would come through that I would know or that I would want to shoot, I would hit their management, label, publicist, and I would try to shoot them. And this is what I was doing for the whole past year, and this is what I continued doing when I was home. And I remember All Time Low. Wow. And I remember All Time Low was coming through Loves Park, Illinois. And I hit them up. I was like, hey, I was on this tour with them. It'd be cool to come do some press photos with them. I'll arrange it. It'll take an hour. And they said, sure. So what I did was I went down there and I hit up a bowling alley. I was like, hey, can I do a photo shoot in your bowling alley? And they're like, okay. Just, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, it's a band that's playing close to you at this venue. And they're like, oh, we know that band. Yeah, sure, come take some photos. And so I went to the bowling alley, set up the lights. I had an assistant stay there. And then I drove to the venue, picked up All Time Low, put in my van. I was very nervous. I remember, I was like, oh shit, this band's in my van. I had a big blue Ford Windstar minivan, which I actually have a picture of me in front of. And I drove that thing, drove so many bands that thing. But I drove them to the bowling alley, and I remember right as I left the venue, I was so nervous that I just drove down the wrong way on the street, and they're all like, oh fuck, what did we just get ourselves into? What's this kid doing? And long story short, the shoot went great. We got some free pizza, we got some free beer, and we shot in a bowling alley. And I don't know if you've ever seen a bowling alley shot of All Time Low, but that was from that day. So I wanted to start getting on more tours, and to pay for these plane tickets, I had to book photo shoots. And because the tours paid for themselves, honestly, because I would shoot so many photos, I would make so many connections that it was just worth it to be on the road. So what I would do was try to book photo shoots to pay for those plane tickets. So I guess my best example of this is I'll give you an example of a tour I remember doing. It was probably my first big long self-booked run. And keep in mind throughout this whole thing I have all my gear with me, my Pelican case, my SKB tall golfing case, backpack with a laptop in it, and my Vagabond battery. So it was a lot of gear, and I wouldn't even do that now. I don't know how I did it then, but this was just determined. But I remember I flew to Virginia, did a shoot there with a local band. From Virginia, I took a train to New Jersey, and in New Jersey, I did a shoot with Ascenders. From New Jersey, I took a train to New York. In New York, I did a shoot with a band called TBTB. From there, I took a few cabs in between, took a plane to Ohio, landed, got picked up in Ohio by Before Their Eyes, and drove with them 24 hours to California, where we started to Scream the Prayer tour. Stayed on that tour for about 12 days. And I jumped off in North Carolina, and I stayed at a girl's house that I met on tour, which was probably the worst decision I ever made. That ended in 3 days, and this photographer named Brett Arthur, who lived in North Carolina, picked me up, saved my ass, and I stayed with him for about a week. And while I was in North Carolina, I did a few shoots with bands that came through and played those venues. And then from there, I hopped on Warped Tour. Brett was nice enough to drive me to Warped Tour. Hopped on Warped Tour with a band called Settings. Was with them for about 14 days in a van. That was very interesting. It was not even a 15-passenger van. It was a very rough tour. And then I sort of got stranded on Warped Tour. And I was about 5 days away from home, and I was just looking for a bus spot. Luckily, Bring Me the Horizon and Dr. Manhattan were on that tour, and my friend was doing sound for Dr. Manhattan, who I had known from local shows back in Madison. And he was like, yeah, sure, come with us. And I think I just slept in a lounge or in the front somewhere with them for 5 days until I got home to Milwaukee. And my girlfriend, not my girlfriend, girl I liked, picked me up in Milwaukee and drove me back home. And that was the first run I did. And lots of experiences, lots of connections, lots of photos, lots of craziness, and there's no way I could do that by staying in one place. So it's the tour I really realized that I should probably start touring more to make all these connections and get on the road more. And I've never, since that point, I've always made it a goal of mine to never pack heavy because I realized how hard that was. And so I've never packed clothes. I've always just gone gear, laptop, and go for it. Kind of just the goal is to just be mobile and just be ready to do anything because you never really know what's going to happen. And that tour was an example of it. And I was just learning so much on these tours that you couldn't learn by not doing. So it's just important for me to keep going and keep doing them. And yeah, when I say sleeping in a van, I don't mean like we had a bed in a van. We had like all the seats were in there. Everybody had their own seat to sleep on, and then I slept in the back on the floor underneath the seat. And I remember I used my shoes as my pillow, and I used my hoodie as my pillow. My shoes would go right here on my body to kind of support me, and I slept there. And actually, it was pretty comfortable. The hard part about work is it's made for buses, so when you get to the venue, it's like super hot and you have nowhere to sleep. And in addition to that, I didn't have food. It was just like a rough kind of on the body tour. I just had to scrounge, just wing it. Once I hopped on with Bring Me the Horizon and Dr. Manhattan, that was just crazy. They're like Dr. Manhattan is like the happiest, nicest band, and Bring Me the Horizon is like they're happy and nice, but they're crazy. And they were young then. That was 2008. They were all like early 20s or not even. And I did photo shoots for them. I did photo shoots for like a ton of bands on Warped Tour, just whoever I could like talk to and meet, and just learned how Warped Tour worked, and it was great. I like that tour, and I've done it 6 times now total. I'll be leaving for it again tomorrow, so I think that'll be this is my 6th year or my 5th year. It's been a lot of years. The rest of this, I mean, right now this puts us at about August of 2008, and honestly the rest of my year was really rough. I went through a lot of rough times personally, and it affected my photography a lot. It was a constant struggle to stay happy enough to do my photo shoots and concentrate enough to get everything done. And my manager, like, can't thank him enough, helped me through it so much, help patch up the things I fucked up in. But for the last like 6 months of that year, I didn't even shoot really. I did like a Bring Me the Horizon cover shoot for Substream. That was awesome. That was my first cover. And then I also wrote a DVD tutorial thing to make some money with because I was like hurting. I didn't have like any money. So I wrote a DVD tutorial in my basement, recorded it actually I had to record it twice. The first time it was all wrong. I had learned from people online how to do it. And it was actually like, it was basically like a tutorial on how to edit my photos. And I still have it. I need to just make it available for download, but it took me a while to do. And I remember it was during the winter in Madison, Wisconsin, and my room was in the basement, and it was freezing. Like, I wore a coat and boots the whole time. Like, I had Ugg boots on, pants, and a coat every day for like a month and a half because it was so cold. And I remember at the end of the winter, my mom being like, "Oh, that's why it's so cold. I had it set at 55, not 65. And I was like, "Are you serious?" Oh my god. It was cold in the house. But, yeah, that year was just like, it was rough. Personally, it was rough. So that's almost like a time that I didn't really progress very much, with the exception of the DVD. And then I launched that DVD in early next year, which that DVD really helped fund the next part of my career. But overall, I think that 2008 was a big year for me, a lot of life learning. Maybe didn't get so much better in photography as the year before, but I learned a lot of life skills and a lot of touring and sort of just how to exist in the music world. I was still pretty young. I was 18, 19 for the second half of the year because my birthday's in June. And yeah, I was just balancing, just trying to balance life, balance work, balance girlfriend, balance staying happy, balance food, just life. I was learning life a lot right then. And I think I'm sort of happy I took some time off from photography there because I just needed to get my shit together. And then it was good. It was good. By the end of 2008, I was... Yeah, I mean, it was good. I guess, long story short, I was in the hospital and I was in a psych ward for a few weeks. And then I got out of there, and by the end of the year, I was in good mental health to continue my career. But that was definitely like a low point in my career, or in my life. But I learned more than I ever could, and I guess I'm happy everything happened the way it happened, because it made me who I am today. And that's probably one of the corniest ways to end my talk. But yeah, that's 2008. Lots of learning. And ready to go for 2009.